Hello and welcome. You're watching the news. I'm Gargi Rawat. Coming up ahead, the Prime Minister is set to hold 3 bilaterals during the G20 weekend. But before that, a quick trip to Indonesia for the ASEAN summit. Also, the opposition hit out over the India to Bharat row, while the Prime Minister reacts on the Sanatan Dharma controversy. Let's take a look at the headlines. NDTV learns from sources the Prime Minister will be holding 3 bilateral meetings during the G20 summit over the coming weekend. One of them will be with US President Joe Biden. Union ministers speak to NDTV ahead of the G20, say the world spotlight will be on India. Smriti Irani says women's issues will be at the center of the G20. Rajiv Chandrasekhar says several countries have expressed interest in India's Aadhaar and UPI platforms. Ahead of the G20, Indian agencies working overtime to keep a check on China-Pak cyber warriors who are trying to undermine India's presidency. It's Bharat instead of India on ASEAN notes and G20 identity cards for officials as the opposition claims the BJP is rattled by the India alliance. External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar defends the move, says Bharat is in the constitution. The centre hit back at Sonia Gandhis after her letter to Prime Minister Modi on no agenda being announced for the special session and deviating from tradition. The Parliamentary Affairs Minister hit back, saying perhaps she wasn't paying attention. The agenda is discussed just before the Parliament session. And Prime Minister Modi reacts to the Sanatan Dharma controversy, tells ministers that the remarks of the Tamil Nadu minister Udayanidhi Stalin needs proper response, as Stalin Jr. remains defiant, says he's ready to face legal action. As India readies for the G20 summit this weekend, where several world leaders like US President Joe Biden, UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, Canada's Justin Trudeau and several other world leaders will arrive in Delhi, NDTV has learned from sources in the Prime Minister's office that the Prime Minister will be holding 3 bilaterals during the weekend. One of those meetings will be held with US President Joe Biden. So 3 bilaterals, of which 1 bilateral will be with the US President. Now, it is a busy week for the Prime Minister, who's set to make a quick dash to Indonesia tonight for the India-ASEAN summit before the G20 begins here in Delhi. In fact, it's a 24-hour trip that he will be making to Indonesia. So let's take you through his entire program. He leaves tonight and he will land in Jakarta at 3 a.m. He will then spend the morning at the summit. He'll leave for the summit at 7 a.m. and from 8:45 onwards, he'll participate in the summit where the focus is on building ties with the ASEAN bloc. Then before noon at 11:45, he will depart for the Jakarta airport and then fly back to India, arriving in Delhi by the evening. Traveling full 24 hours, spending just a few hours in Jakarta for the ASEAN summit. Ahead of the G20, several ministers have spoken on what the big issues will be during the multilaterals that are going to be taking place during the summit. Union Minister Smriti Irani told NDTV that women's issues are at the forefront of the G20.
So, in Bali last year, the Prime Minister made a very interesting statement. He said that global development is not possible without the participation of women. In the last 10 months, can you tell us how has the government strived to, create conversations about gender in a very meaningful way?
I think that for the first time in the history of the G20 universe, you have women's issues at center stage. Now, under his leadership, that the G20 ecosystem also recognizes that the issues of women cannot be reduced to the sidelines is one of the greatest contributions that our countries had to the G20 deliberations. I also feel the way women in our country have leveraged many government schemes, especially those that are digitally driven, has also become topics for much conversation in many countries that we have had bilaterals with. The Prime Minister's insistence on looking on one earth talks about sustainability, talks about eco-friendly way of life, but when he talks about one earth, one family, at the center stage of that is women. The fact that when he talks about the future of the world, we have brought center stage our digital capacities. So I believe that not only women-led development as an adage, but also the entire ethos of his governance agenda is now mainstreamed in G20.
So ma'am, when we talk about women-led development, there's also this concern about missing women in India's workforce. I know the government has been trying very hard to improve female participation in India's workforce. Are you optimistic?
I think that there has been deliberations on issues of women and governance, where we have spoken about the need to recognize women in the SME segment. The world over, women and enterprise recognizes big businesses. There are conversations around mid-sized businesses. India, at the forefront of its presidency, has put together women in the SME segment as equal participants to the economic quality of a country. Secondly, the Prime Minister's agenda of Lakpati Didi through self-help groups has found resonance not only in the global south, but has also attracted the attention of G20 bigwigs. Their economic participation needs to be quantified when you talk about the labor force participation perspective. I also believe that women, not only in small businesses, but women who are doing solo enterprises who get covered under Swanidhi schemes. I think that those women also now, we have at least in our deliberations ensured that they get factored in. So when you talk about missing women, are you talking, like I said, from a perspective of women who are missing out an opportunity to participate, or those who participate and are yet not counted?
Ma'am, also the Leaders Summit is just 2 days away. What are your expectations on the outcomes? And do you think that G20 is also the right kind of platform to accelerate something like, say, the SDGs?
I think that it is incumbent upon the MEA to have that interface to tell you where the Leaders Summit in terms of outcome will stand. The Prime Minister's office is also extremely, I think we work through the MEA to speak in one voice on issues of G20. I think that if you'll ask for a female perspective, what India has already done is applauded the world over, and especially in our bilaterals or in our ministerial conferences, the kind of response we have received from female leaders of the world has been overwhelming. They never imagined that their issues will be, like I said earlier, mainstreamed and brought center stage.
And NDTV also spoke to ITE Minister of State Rajiv Chandrasekhar on India emerging as a global leader in digital public infrastructure and expectations from G20 summit on the digital economy.
What are your big expectations from the G20 summit that is going to happen?
No, look, I think you said that the spotlight of the world is on India and our Prime Minister during this presidency of Bharat of the G20. On that, there is no doubt.
We have showcased our strength in the digital public infrastructure. The UPI transactions, for instance, in August crossed 10 billion mark. World is increasingly looking at India to lead the digital economy architecture that is emerging. Are we ready to share the strengths and knowledge we have for digital public infrastructure building, and how many countries are we in talks now to
Look, there is certainly amongst the many things that India is today inspiring the rest of the world. One of the key areas is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision of using technology to empower people, to transform people's lives, improve their lives, and transform and improve democracy. Now that is certainly been made possible because of the DPIs that India has made and built, and there is a lot of interest from around the world for India's DPIs, whether it is Aadhaar or UPI or eSanjeevani or DigiLocker. And we will continue to work with the countries of the world. 8 countries have already approached India for the India DPI, and we will work with them to be able to transfer the technology and the innovation and that whole solution set to them at no cost, as Prime Minister Narendra Modi has promised.
With this comes the question of cyber security. You've also been saying that there are many other countries with which we are in talks now for the DPI. But on cyber security, from the G20 summit perspective, what should we expect?
India has always maintained that the internet and the broader technology ecosystem should be safe and trusted and accountable for all those who use it. Those values and those principles have translated into discussions in the Digital Economy Working Group meetings of the G20. where there is now a consensus that cyber security for the digital economy is an area that the countries of the world agree that they must cooperate. And I think beyond this G20, there will be certainly many global protocols and agreements between countries to make cybersecurity a priority and to implement it.
Speaking to NDTV, former Australia President Tony Abbott said the G20 presidency is a great chance for the country to showcase itself to the world. And he also said of late, India has been taking a much more outward-looking position on global issues.
India has pitched its presidency as people's presidency. It has taken this opportunity to showcase its diversity to the world. As a former Prime Minister and someone who hosted G20 in 2014, how do you think India shaped this grouping?
Well, I certainly think that the G20 presidency has been a wonderful chance for India to showcase itself to the world. India is now the world's 5th largest economy. It's the world's fastest growing large economy. It's the world's most populous nation. Under Narendra Modi, India is taking a much more outward-looking position on global issues. Narendra Modi is a transformative leader, both domestically and globally. I think really this has been a coming of age for India as the emerging democratic global superpower, and the G20 has just been a wonderful opportunity for the world to sit up and take notice of just how much India is transforming right now under the Modi government.
Indian agencies are working overtime to keep a check on China and Pakistan's cyber warriors who are trying to undermine India ahead of the G20. Keeping cyber threats in mind, India has raised the level of alertness around its critical infrastructure.
As Delhi gears up to welcome world leaders for the G20 meet this weekend, security agencies have raised an alarm over cyber threats. Government data shows that social media warriors from both China and Pakistan are spinning a web of lies to discredit India's hosting of the world's mega event in its capital. Ministry of Home Affairs, which handles cyber security, indicates that misinformation that is going viral is originating from handles being operated in China and Pakistan. These platforms are mostly sharing fake information on Kashmir. Although agencies have blocked many accounts, many handles are still peddling fake news.
क्योंकि साइबर स्पेस इतना फर्टाइल इकोसिस्टम है और इसका दुरुपयोग करके कहीं ना कहीं किसी ना किसी दिशा में आप आक्रमण कर सकते हैं, तो मुझे लगता है कि भारत को और साइबर रेडीनेस अडॉप्ट करनी पड़ेगी, अपनी साइबर सुरक्षा पर और ध्यान देना पड़ेगा.
Keeping the threats in mind, India has raised the level of alertness all around its critical infrastructure, especially around those 30 hotels where the guests are about to stay. As per government, such cyber attacks have happened earlier during G20 conferences. In February 2011, a spear phishing attack occurred at the time of the Paris G20 summit, and phishing emails and malware attachments were sent to the French Ministry of Finance officials with the aim of accessing classified G20 documents. In 2014, personal data of attendees at the G20 meeting in Brisbane was leaked. In June 2017, the Hamburg G20 summit was targeted by hackers. Cyber security at summit when news is being handled by the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team, while the rest of Delhi is being manned by Cyber Security Wing of Delhi Police. The police has given very strict instructions to all the hotels regarding system routers and Wi-Fi connections. In New Delhi, Neeta Sharma reporting for NDTV.
And ahead of the G20, as we said at the start of the bulletin, the Prime Minister is making a quick dash to Indonesia, and he's leaving tonight. There you can see the Prime Minister leaving for Indonesia to attend the ASEAN summit. In fact, he'll be in the plane more than he will be in Indonesia. He flies out today, and he will arrive there at 3 a.m., then leave at 7 a.m. to attend the summit around 8:45, and then fly back to India at 11:45. So the Prime Minister there leaving for Jakarta. Former Congress chief Sonia Gandhi wrote to the Prime Minister today pointing out that no agenda had been listed for the special session of Parliament that will begin from the 18th of September. Remember, there has been a lot of speculation over what will be taken up during that special session, a 5-day session. Underscoring that no agenda had been announced for the special session, she also listed 9 subjects and demanded a discussion on them. She said they should have a discussion on center-state relationship, communalism, and border conflict with China during the special session. However, the government replied, and it was a sharp response from the Centre. Parliamentary Affairs Minister Prahlad Joshi wrote back saying Mrs. Gandhi perhaps is not aware of the issues and is not aware and claiming that it is all according to the tradition and that she is not aware of it. That he wrote back saying that the session has been called following tradition. Before calling the Parliament session, issues are never discussed, the agenda is never discussed. He said just before the session begins is when a meeting is held and the issues are discussed.
Article 85 provides this specific provision to the government provides this power to the government, and accordingly, after following the due process, we have called this session. And unnecessarily making a issue out of a non-issue to do the politics or politicize the issue is very, very unfortunate.
And the other big controversy, the use of President of Bharat instead of the traditional President of India on official G20 summit invitations first sparked the buzz. The move that comes days ahead of the special session of Parliament has sent political temperatures soaring. Bharat has also been used in the G20 booklet meant for foreign delegates titled Bharat, the Mother of Democracy, and also for some cards, for ID cards for officials. Now, this has sparked speculation that the government may put forward a resolution to change the country's name later this month during the 5-day special session. This drew criticism from the opposition. The members of the opposition India bloc accused the Narendra Modi government of distorting history and dividing India. And taking a veiled dig at the opposition parties, however, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said that India, that is Bharat, is a line that is mentioned in the Constitution as well.
India, that is Bharat, it is there in the Constitution. Please, I would invite everybody to read it.
So it's not something which is new, it is something which existed in the Constitution, and so you didn't do, it's not a new roll of dice.
No, I think when you say Bharat, in a sense a meaning and a understanding and a connotation that comes with it, and that is reflected in our Constitution as well.
So with this row and speculation over a possible name change from India to Bharat, we now take a look at countries that have actually renamed themselves, be it to throw off colonial legacies or to reclaim their historic identities. Here's a report.
The prospect of India changing its official name to Bharat isn't an unusual or novel idea. Several nations in recent history have undergone transformations, shedding their old names to adopt new ones. But why do nations decide to rename themselves? The partition of a nation results in the birth of 2 new nations, and the most famous example is that of India itself, which is split into 2 upon independence to give birth to India and to Pakistan. Similarly, East Pakistan became Bangladesh after the 1971 war with West Pakistan. The name Bangladesh reflected the nation's newly independent cultural and linguistic identity. Czechoslovakia was dissolved in 1993 to make way for the Czech Republic, which is now known as Czechia, and Slovakia, marking the divisions between the 2 ethnic groups, the Czechs and the Slovaks. Some nations changed their name to break away from their colonial past and reflect their native identities. Sri Lanka did it in 1972 when it dropped the colonial name Ceylon for the Sinhalese name, which means resplendent land. Some nations change names to reclaim historical identities, like in 1935. The Shah asked the foreign delegates to use the name Iran, not Persia, for his country. Similarly, in 2018, Swaziland was rechristened to its pre-colonial name Eswatini on its 50th anniversary to shrug off its colonial past. In 2021, Turkey's President Erdogan announced that his nation would be known as Turkiye because it represents the culture and values of the country. But the move was seen as a push to rebrand the nation and dissociate it from a bird of the same name and its negative connotations. Similarly, Burma was renamed Myanmar in 1989 by the ruling military junta in an attempt to legitimize their power. But some nations continue to call the nation by its old name over concerns of human rights abuses and a lack of democratic transition. But the question is, will India, like these countries, be officially renamed too and go back to its ancient name of Bharat, which finds a place in the Indian constitution as well? Well, only time will tell. Nayantara Singh for NDTV.
Now, a challenge for the India opposition alliance in Punjab, where there are rumblings in the state units of the Congress and Aam Aadmi Party over the agreement for seat sharing in the 2024 elections. Both state units have said they will put up candidates for all the 13 seats.
Days after top India alliance leaders said they would fight upcoming elections together as far as possible, a hiccup in Punjab, where the Aam Aadmi Party and the Congress cannot seem to agree on seat sharing for 13 Lok Sabha seats. First, the Punjab Congress said that there is an ongoing discussion within the party on putting up candidates on all 13 seats. Now the Aam Aadmi Party has hit back, saying they are also not keen on an alliance with the Congress in the state.
अभी तक पंजाब में किसी प्रकार का हमारा कोई भी ऐसा ना तो हमें बताया गया है, हमें ये कहा गया है कि आप 13 की 13 सीटों पर चुनाव लड़ने की तैयारी करो, तो हम उस प्रकार से हम चुनाव लड़ने की तैयारी कर रहे हैं।
ਅਸੀਂ ਇਕੱਲਿਆਂ ਲੜਨ ਵੀ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਇਕੱਲਿਆਂ ਜਿੱਤਣ ਵੀ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਸਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਵੀ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਸਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਚਲਾਉਣ ਵੀ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹਾਂ।
Sources say the Punjab Congress is unhappy over the Bhagwant Mann-led AAP government repeatedly accusing the previous Congress regime of massive corruption.
24 कैसे जीतना है?
Less than a month ago, a statement by Congress leader Alka Lamba that the party wanted its leaders to prepare for a contest in all 7 Lok Sabha seats in Delhi had raised a row with the Aam Aadmi Party. The Congress had to later clarify that no such discussions had taken place within the party. But with a rerun of the AAP versus Congress situation, this time in Punjab, the big question is, can the India alliance sort out such issues on the ground and across the country? With Sharat Sharma, Bureau Report, NDTV.
Prime Minister Modi, in his first reaction to the Sanatan Dharma controversy, said that the remarks of the Tamil Nadu Minister Udayanidhi Stalin need proper response. He said this to union ministers. Now, Udayanidhi, who had said Sanatan Dharma needs to be eradicated, however, says today that he stands by his statement and will face legal action. A case has been filed against him in Rampur in Uttar Pradesh.
The Sanatan Dharma remarks by Tamil Nadu Minister Udayanidhi Stalin need a proper response. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said in his first reaction to the Sanatan Dharma controversy. Earlier today, the Prime Minister asked government ministers to counter Stalin Jr. with facts. This as the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister's son stood his ground, refusing to apologize for his remarks that Sanatan Dharma ought to be eradicated just like the dengue, malaria and mosquitoes.
From the day one I've been telling, if you won't take legal action on me, I'm ready to face it, anything. Whatever I said here, I'll say it in the court also.
Demanding your apology.
No, sorry. This is not an apology to them.
Police in the BJP-ruled Uttar Pradesh have filed an FIR against Udayanidhi and Karnataka's Minister Priyank Kharge, who endorsed Stalin Jr.'s comments, invoking a section of the law that deals with hurting religious sentiments. The DMK maintains it's a party built on rationalist principles and that for generations practitioners of Sanatan Dharma had oppressed a bulk of the population, denying them education, equality and even entry into worship places. Call it a sign of panic or a master stroke, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is taking the fight on Sanatan Dharma comments by Udaynidhi Stalin right into the India alliance, even as it takes shape ahead of the 2024 Lok Sabha elections, bolstered by Congress's victory in Karnataka. Irrespective of the legal implications, the controversy for Udaynidhi would only elevate his political stature. With Alok Pandey in Lucknow, in Chennai, with Suresh, Sam Daniel, for NDTV.
And finally, Delhi has been painted and polished up ahead of the G20 this weekend. Several of its iconic monuments are being lit up rather creatively in the run-up to the G20. And take a look at the Qutub Minar wearing the G20 look.